You buy the mall at 6:12 on a Tuesday morning. Not officially. The wire will not hit until Friday, the lender still needs one last certificate, and your attorney keeps saying subject to final closing conditions like a prayer. But in your head, it is already yours. The old cream-colored shopping mall off Route 19. 2 department store boxes, 1 movie theater with sun-faded posters, a food court that smells like fryer oil before anything is open, and 4,800 parking spaces wrapped around it like a gray moat. Your friends think you bought a corpse. Your mother thinks you bought a building. Your lender thinks you bought an income stream. Your lawyer thinks you bought 137 problems with a roof. You paid $42 million for it, or that is what the purchase agreement says. The seller bought it for almost double that before online shopping, before the department store bankruptcy, before the wing near the old Sears started echoing when you walked through it. You put in $11 million of equity with 2 partners and borrowed the rest from a bank that made you personally sign 3 carve-out guarantees you barely understood until midnight. And now you are standing outside the glass doors, holding a coffee that tastes like burnt paper, staring at the thing everybody else calls dead. That is the first secret of owning a mall. The public judges it by how it feels at 2:30 on a Wednesday afternoon. You judge it by the rent roll. They see the empty fountain, the locked jewelry kiosk, the kids cutting through the concourse because it is raining. You see 812,000 square feet of gross leasable area. You see the dentist on a 10-year lease paying every month. You see the discount gym that turned the old sporting goods store into cash flow. You see the Chick-fil-A out parcel you do not even own yet but will try to buy before the year ends because it sits on your front corner like a money printer with a drive-through window. You also see the damage. The old anchor pays almost nothing because someone in 1998 thought the department store was the sun and everyone else was just orbiting around it. The inline tenants pay far more per square foot, but they only survive if the hallway has a pulse. The roof over the south wing needs work. The escalator vendor wants $93,000 before they will talk about parts. The insurance broker left a voicemail that begins with given the asset class, which you have learned means the quote will be disgusting. Still, the mall is not dead, it is sick. There is a difference. Dead means there is no rent, no traffic, no lender, no path. Sick means the body still produces cash if you know where to press. By 7:00, the maintenance supervisor, Manny, opens the side door for you. He has worked here longer than you have been an adult. He knows which tenant lies about sales, which hallway leaks during sideways rain, which security camera is fake because the real one got stolen, and which anchor manager parks in the fire lane because nobody has been brave enough to stop him. You sure about this place? He asks. You look down the concourse. The lights flicker on in sections. A jewelry store sign buzzes. Somewhere behind a metal gate, a bakery mixer starts turning. No, you think. Then you say, let's see the rent roll. Because the economics of owning a shopping mall do not begin with stores. They begin with paper. Leases, options, reimbursements, percentage rent clauses, co-tenancy clauses, loan covenants, zoning maps, old easement agreements, and one spreadsheet where every cell is either a promise or a lie. The mall is not really a building. It is a stack of contracts wearing a roof. Manny takes you through the service corridor first, not the pretty hallway. Behind the storefronts, there are gray doors with tenant names written in marker. A sneaker store, a pretzel stand, a local boutique that sells candles named after emotions, a phone repair shop with 3 unpaid notices taped to the office window. None of them looks important alone. Together, they are the machine. The sneaker store pays base rent. Simple enough. A fixed amount per square foot every month, whether a single pair of shoes sells or not. The lease says 41 per square foot. It sounds small until you multiply it by 3,200 square feet and 12 months and realize one rectangle of polished tile can throw off more than a middle-class salary before you have even counted reimbursements. The smoothie shop pays less base rent but has a percentage rent clause. If sales cross a certain breakpoint, you get a small slice of the upside. Not enough to make you rich by itself. Enough that you suddenly care how many teenage soccer teams come through on Saturdays. Enough that the line at the register is no longer just a line. It is a data feed with fruit in it. Then there is CAM, Common Area Maintenance. The phrase sounds harmless, like a janitor pushing a cart. It is not harmless. CAM is how the mall breathes. Hallway cleaning, landscaping, security, common electricity, snow removal, parking lot repairs, trash, sometimes insurance, sometimes taxes, sometimes the management fee if the lease allows it. The landlord pays the bills, then passes each tenant its share based on the lease. The dentist pays rent for the office, then helps pay for the parking lot the patients use. The boutique pays rent for the shop, then helps pay for the corridor that gets vacuumed at 4:00 a.m. The phone repair shop argues about why holiday decorations should not count because nobody came here for garland. You used to think landlords got rich from rent. Now you understand the better ones get rich from recoveries. Not in a scammy way, in a survival way. A mall is too expensive to operate if every light bulb, security patrol, and roof drain sits only on your side of the ledger. The lease is the difference between owning an asset and babysitting a financial leak. Manny points to a row of ceiling tiles near the old fountain. That leak comes back every winter. You ask how much it costs. Depends who you ask, he says. The roofer says 18,000. The tenant under it says their whole business is ruined. Accounting says we can recover part of it. Legal says don't put that in writing. That is the second secret. Every dollar in a mall has an argument attached. A small tenant wants lower CAM because their store is slow. The landlord wants higher recoveries because the parking lot is cracked. The anchor wants a clean property but negotiated a lease so old and generous it feels like a family heirloom. The lender wants net operating income, not excuses. The buyer wants upside. The seller wants you to believe the vacancy is temporary. The city wants property taxes, the roof wants cash. You sit in the old management office at 8:15 with the rent roll spread across the conference table. It is not glamorous. It is tenant names, square footage, lease dates, base rent, options, sales reports, recoveries, security deposits, and notes written by someone who clearly hated their job. The phone repair shop is 17,000 behind. The dentist is current. The arcade has a termination option if the movie theater closes. The nail salon pays on time and complains about everything. The regional fashion store pays real rent but has 18 months left. The Halloween store pays beautifully for 2 months and disappears like a ghost with a W-9. You start to understand why the previous owner aged so quickly. Owning a mall is not collecting one big check. It is collecting 87 small checks from people who all believe their check should be smaller. It is knowing which tenants matter because they pay the most, which ones matter because they bring traffic, and which ones matter because losing them triggers a clause buried on page 41 of another tenant's lease. By 9:00, the food court opens. The Chinese place turns on its heat lamps. The pizza shop pulls dough from a plastic bin. A retired man walks the loop for exercise, passing 4 storefronts that are still dark and 1 kiosk selling phone cases to nobody. Your broker calls and asks how it feels to be a mall owner. You look at the spreadsheet. You have $5.8 million of in-place annual base rent if everyone pays. You have reimbursements that might cover most operating expenses if tenants stop fighting them. You have percentage rent that looks cute in the model and fragile in real life. You have vacancy that costs money even when nobody is inside because empty space still needs lights, insurance, HVAC, and hope. It feels, you say, like owning a vending machine where every snack has a lawyer? The broker laughs because he thinks you are joking. You are not. The old department store manager arrives at 9:40 wearing a suit that looks too formal for a mall that has a temporary Spirit Halloween banner folded in the storage room. His name is Grant. He manages the North Anchor, 147,000 square feet of beige carpet, fluorescent lighting, lonely perfume counters, and escalators that sound like they are remembering better decades. The store pays less rent per square foot than almost anyone else in the building. Less than the sneaker store, less than the dentist, less than the boutique selling candles called Abundance. When you first saw the lease, you thought it was a mistake. It was not a mistake. It was the deal. Anchor tenants used to be the reason the mall existed. They were the magnets. The department store brought the families walked the corridor fed the inline stores, and the inline stores paid the landlord real money. The anchor got cheap rent because it created gravity. Grant knows this. He carries himself like a man whose store has not paid market rent since the Clinton administration and still expects a reserved parking space. We need the west entrance cleaned up, he says before hello. The landscaping looks tired. You almost mentioned that his rent would barely cover the landscaping around his own entrance. You do not. You are learning. The anchor may pay the least, but it controls the mood of the property. If the anchor goes dark, the hallway beyond it changes overnight. Customers stop walking that end. Smaller tenants start asking for rent relief. Prospective tenants ask why the biggest box is empty. Your lender asks what the updated appraisal says. Your partners stop using words like upside and start using words like liquidity. Worse, some leases have co-tenancy clauses. That means if certain anchors close or if occupancy drops below a threshold, smaller tenants may get reduced rent or even the right to leave. One dead box can become a legal permission slip for other checks to shrink. You do not just lose a tenant, you lose confidence, traffic, and sometimes rent you thought was locked. This is why a mall can look fine to a shopper and terrifying to an owner. To the shopper, the North Anchor is a place to return socks. To you, it is a keystone. Ugly, underpaying, annoying, but still holding weight. The strange part is the market outside your mall is not as dead as the internet wants it to be. Retail entered 2026 with very little new supply. Vacancy is still low by historical standards, and shopping center rents are still rising in many places. Restaurants, discount retailers, grocery concepts, gyms, medical users, and value operators are expanding. Good centers and good trade areas have become scarce. That sounds like good news until you remember your mall is not automatically a good center just because supply is tight. Scarcity helps the strong first. A grocery-anchored center in a growing Sunbelt suburb is not the same animal as an enclosed mall with two aging department stores and a fountain that looks like it gave up in 2007. The market can be healthy and your hallway can still be sick. Both can be true. At noon, you eat bourbon chicken from a styrofoam box and watch the mall do its small daily performance. A mother pushes a stroller past the vacant jewelry store. Three teenagers film themselves on the escalator. A nurse from the medical office in the old Sears wing buys a smoothie. A man in a construction vest photographs the empty pad near the movie theater because you're trying to lease it to anyone with enough money and confidence to sign. That is the third secret. You are not really in the shopping business. You are in the traffic business. Rent follows traffic. Traffic follows reasons. Reasons change. In 1998, the reason was department stores. In 2010, maybe it was the movie theater. In 2026, it might be a gym, a medical clinic, a restaurant row, a children's play place, a discount grocery, a school, apartments on the parking lot, or some weird entertainment concept with waivers, neon lights, and a private equity owner. The mall does not care what the reason is. It only cares that people come. Grant finds you again near the old fountain. He says corporate may evaluate the store's footprint next year. You have heard enough corporate language to know this can mean anything from new paint to a funeral. We have options, you say. He smiles like he knows you need him more than he needs you. And for now, he is right. That night you go home and read his lease again. Not because you want to, because in mall ownership, the most powerful person in the building is not always the one paying you the most. Sometimes it is the one paying almost nothing, occupying 147,000 square feet, and holding the legal right to make everyone else nervous. 3 weeks after closing, your lender asks for the updated NOI bridge. You stare at the email because the words are simple and the consequences are not. NOI, net operating income. The money the property produces after operating expenses, before debt service, before the owner's big dreams, before the partners start texting about distributions. In residential real estate, people talk about rent. In commercial real estate, serious people talk about NOI because NOI is what the asset is worth. The formula sounds almost too easy. Take the property's NOI and divide it by the cap rate. That gives you value. If the mall produces $4 million of NOI and buyers demand an 8% cap rate, the mall is worth about $50 million. If you can push NOI to $5 million at the same cap rate, value becomes $62.5 million. $1 million more income, $12.5 million more value. That is the drug. That is why you bought the mall. Not because you love kiosks, not because you always dreamed of negotiating with a pretzel franchisee about grease trap charges. Because a commercial property is one of the few places where increasing income can create a giant paper jump in value, as if the building itself woke up richer. But the formula has a knife hidden inside it. If the market decides your mall is riskier and the cap rate moves from 8% to 9%, the same $4 million of NOI is no longer worth $50 million. It is worth about $44 million. Nothing changed in the hallway. The same tenants opened, the same lights turned on. But on paper, millions disappeared because buyers demanded a higher return. This is where mall ownership becomes less like monopoly and more like surgery. Every lease matters, every expiration matters, every tenant credit score matters. A grocery store on a long lease from a national chain is priced differently from a local boutique that might vanish when the owner's cousin stops helping on weekends. A center with 95% occupancy is valued differently from one at 82%, even if the empty space looks leasable in the broker's pitch deck. A roof with 5 good years left is different from a roof with 1 bad storm left. You start seeing the building in cap rate language. The dentist is lower risk. The phone repair shop is higher risk. The movie theater is a traffic driver, but also a capital expenditure waiting to happen. The old anchor is cheap rent but strategic importance. The vacant wing is negative NOI with optionality. The outparcel might trade like gold because drive-through users love visibility and do not need the mall to be cool. Your partners want to know when the distributions start. Your answer is always some version of after stabilization, which is a beautiful commercial real estate word meaning not yet. First, you have to stop the bleeding. Collect past due rent. Renegotiate the security contract. Challenge the tax assessment. Fix the roof only where it actually fails instead of where the roofer's proposal dreams of failing. Replace the vacant jewelry store with a tenant that can pay. Convert dead hallway seating into a kiosk zone. Get the food court tenants to report sales correctly so the percentage rent is not just decorative language. The smallest wins start feeling enormous. You lease 1,100 square feet to a local MedSPA at 48 per square foot. That is not a trophy deal in Manhattan. In your mall, it is oxygen. You replace a dead seasonal store with a tutoring center. You discover one lease allows a 3% annual escalation that accounting forgot to bill. You send the notice. The tenant gets angry. The spreadsheet gets better. Then comes the ugly math. The HVAC unit above the cinema wing dies in August. The replacement quote is $186,000. The lender does not care that the air conditioner chose violence. The tenants do not care that capital expenditures are different from operating expenses. Customers just know it is hot. Suddenly, a metal box on the roof is eating the year's cash. This is the fourth secret. A mall can make you rich on paper and pour in cash at the same time. You can increase value by improving NOI, but you need cash to protect the NOI. You need tenants to create traffic, but tenants want proof of traffic before they sign. You need to redevelop dead space, but redevelopment takes permits, lender consent, anchor consent, zoning meetings, parking studies, engineers, and money that always seems more available in the model than in the bank account. At 11:30 one night, you walk the property alone with the rent roll open on your phone. The mall is quiet in a way that makes every sound feel expensive. The fountain motor hums. The security guard's radio clicks. Somewhere, a roof drain taps into a bucket Manny swears is temporary. You used to think the building was the asset. Now you know the asset is the income, and the building is just the machine that may or may not keep producing it. The first time someone tells you the parking lot is the real treasure, you think they are being poetic. They are not. It happens in a zoning consultant's office with bad coffee and a wall full of maps. She pulls up an aerial image of your mall, not the leasing plan, not the food court, just the land. From above, the building looks smaller than it feels inside. The parking lot looks enormous. Seas of asphalt, drive aisles, light poles, storm drains, empty spaces near the back that have not been full since Black Friday mattered. You do not own a mall, she says. You own 100 acres with cash flow. That sentence changes the way you see the property. The dying part is retail as it used to be. The interesting part is control. Land at a major intersection. Utilities already there. Roads already there. Parking already there. Customers already trained to know where the place is. A city that hates the empty boxes but wants new tax base. This is why old malls are turning into town centers, apartments, medical districts, restaurant rows, campuses, entertainment zones, and strange hybrids. The box was built for shopping. The land can be used for life. You start with the outparcels because they are easier to understand. The front corner by the highway could be a coffee drive-through. The pad near the cinema could be a fast casual restaurant. The weird triangle near the back entrance could fit a car wash if the traffic engineer does not ruin your week. Each little parcel can become a separate rent stream. You begin to understand why some mall owners stare at parking lots the way other people stare at jewelry. Then the apartment developer calls. He does not care about your food court. He cares about the 14 acres behind the south wing where the asphalt is mostly empty. He talks about 420 units, structured parking, a pool deck, a pedestrian connection to the mall, and a rent number that makes your partners sit up straighter. He says the mall could become mixed use. You have learned that mixed use means everyone gets excited until the first parking study arrives. Because the mall is not a blank canvas. It is a trapped animal made of old agreements. Anchor tenants may have approval rights over changes to the site. Old easement agreements can control parking, access roads, signage, use restrictions, even what kind of buildings can be added. The department store that barely pays rent may still have the right to block your apartment plan if it thinks residents will steal parking from customers who no longer come. A document signed before you were born can stop a project that would save the property. You begin reading old agreements the way other people read horror. One clause says the north anchor must approve common area changes over a certain size. Another requires a parking ratio that made sense when every suburban family came in 2 cars to buy school clothes. Another restricts residential use unless certain parties consent. Your lawyer says none of this is impossible. Your lawyer also bills by the hour. Still, the optionality is real. You tour a mall conversion in another state where the old department store became medical offices, the dead parking field became apartments, and the food court became a restaurant hall that actually has people in it after 7:00 p.m. It does not feel like a mall anymore. It feels like a small downtown someone assembled from debt, zoning approvals, and stubbornness. You walk through it with envy in your throat. The owner there tells you the hardest part was sequencing. You cannot tear everything up and hope tenants survive. You have to keep cash flow alive while rebuilding the thing that creates the cash flow. Move parking here, demolish there, keep the dentist open, protect the theater entrance, keep the lender updated, hold the city closed, keep tenants from thinking construction means the mall is dying rather than mutating. That word stays with you, mutating. Your mall does not need to become what it was. It needs to become what the land can support now. Maybe that is a discount grocery in the old anchor and apartments on the edge. Maybe it is a medical clinic where the department store sold bedding. Maybe it is pickleball courts under the roofline, a gym in the box, restaurants facing the parking lot, and a small public green where the fountain used to sit. You sketched the first crude plan on a legal pad at midnight. Phase 1, lease the out parcel. Phase 2, split the dead anchor box. Phase 3, apartments on the south lot if the anchors consent. Phase 4, restaurant row facing the road. Phase 5, refinance if NOI improves before rates punish you. It looks almost elegant on paper. In real life, it will be permits, hearings, demolition dust, cost overruns, and one city council member asking whether the new apartments have enough character. But for the first time since closing, you feel the difference between buying a dying mall and buying land that happens to have a dying mall on top of it. That is the fifth secret. The best mall deal may not be a mall deal at all. It may be a land deal with enough rent to pay the interest while you wait for the future to become legal. 6 months in, you stop saying you own a shopping mall. It sounds too clean, too simple, like you bought a giant store and now wait for rent checks to arrive in a neat stack. What you own is stranger. You own the morning when Manny texts that the loading dock door is stuck and the bakery truck is blocking the trash compactor. You own the nail salon complaining about the smoothie shop's blender. You own the spreadsheet where a small kiosk can matter because it proves holiday traffic is coming back. You own the lender call where you say occupancy is improving and hope nobody asks too much about tenant improvement allowances. You own the city meeting where everyone wants redevelopment until they see the apartment building. You own Grant from the anchor calling about landscaping again. You own the roof. The roof always wins. And if you are good, you own time. That is what the mall really sells you. Not certainty, not passive income, time. Time to replace bad tenants with better ones. Time to turn a vacant box into a gym, a clinic, a discount grocery, or a weird entertainment concept. Time to push rents where the market allows it. Time to cut expenses without making the property feel abandoned. Time to get approvals for the parking lot. Time to prove to the lender that the asset is not a melting ice cube. But time is expensive. Every month, debt service arrives whether or not the city planner liked your site plan. Insurance arrives whether or not the anchor reports good traffic. Payroll arrives for security, maintenance, management, cleaning. Empty space consumes utilities and reputation. The mall does not pause while you figure it out. It keeps asking for cash. One Friday night near Christmas, the property finally looks alive. The parking lot is half full. The food court has a line. A local choir is singing near the fountain because marketing called it community activation, and for once the phrase does not make you want to walk into traffic. Parents carry shopping bags. Teenagers take pictures. The gym is packed. The candle boutique is somehow selling out of something called quiet luxury, and the old anchor has more customers than employees. You stand on the second level and watch it from above. For a few minutes, you understand why people built these things like temples. The mall was never only about shopping. It was weatherproof public life with a cash register attached. It was where boredom went to spend money. Then Manny walks up beside you and points to the ceiling near the south wing. Leaks back. Of course it is. You laugh in a way that scares you a little because it sounds like acceptance. That night, after closing, you walk the property alone. Gates down. Music off. Without people, the building looks less like a business and more like a question. Can you keep the anchors long enough to redevelop? Can you raise NOI before the cap rate moves against you? Can you turn asphalt into apartments before the old leases block you? You pass the empty jewelry store, now leased to the med-spa. You pass the phone repair shop, finally on a payment plan. You pass the old fountain, which you plan to remove even though 3 people at the city meeting called it iconic. The economics are clear now. If you bought only the retail, you may be in trouble. If you bought the leases, you may survive. If you bought the land, the traffic, the zoning path, and the patience to convert a fading box into a new center, you may have stolen something everyone else mispriced. That is why mall ownership is dangerous. It can look dead and be valuable. It can look busy and be bankrupt. It can throw off cash while quietly rotting. It can lose money for years and then become worth a fortune because the parking lot became apartments. The building lies to everyone who looks at it too quickly. The shopper sees stores, the tenant sees rent, the banker sees NOI. The city sees tax base, the developer sees land. And you, walking through the empty concourse with a roof leak, a lender covenant, and a legal pad full of redevelopment phases, finally see the whole thing. You do not own stores, you own a machine that turns traffic into rent, rent into NOI, NOI into value, and asphalt into optionality. If you get it wrong, it eats your cash and calls it maintenance. If you get it right, everyone will say you were lucky to buy when nobody wanted malls anymore. They will not see the leases you renegotiated, the tenants you replaced, the anchor clauses you survived, the city meetings, the roof buckets, the lender calls, the parking studies, or the night you stood under a leaking ceiling wondering whether you had bought the future or just inherited the past with better branding. Apartments lit up where asphalt used to be, restaurants facing the road, a grocery store in the dead anchor, a clinic where bedding used to be sold, kids playing on the green where the fountain used to hum to nobody. And you will know the truth. The mall was not dead. It was just waiting for someone to figure out what part of it was still alive.